9. Best Blood-Shattering Werewolf Games Explored. The games where you play as a werewolf. Werewolves are partially human, half monster creatures who have appeared in films, television shows, and video games. Werewolves, despite their counterparts, vampires, are frequently limited to supporting roles in video games. Werewolves are fantastic, but they can also be frightening. For as long as there has been media to put them in, they've been both heroes and villains. What makes you think video games are any different? Having said that, there are a few games that involve werewolves in some capacity. Some of these monsters may be good, while others may be bad. One thing is certain, people love werewolves in video games, regardless of which side of the scale these furry, mythological animals are on. Werewolves may be more relevant because, for the most part, they preserve their human characteristics till a full moon. Werewolves who have undergone the change might become scary, irrational, and isolated. Here is a list of video games that allow you to play as werewolves and embrace their qualities fully that you must get your hands on. Altered Beast. After the arcade success of Altered Beast in 1988, Sega included a remarkable version of this game with the Genesis system the following year. Many of the games in Sega's vintage collection have aged well, including this one. It's a classic video game trope, with a muscle-bound jerk pummeling his way through endless waves of demons to save a hapless damsel. The ability to transform into near-invincible animals midway through every level was the main lure back when the game first came out. This is a side-scrolling fighter set in ancient Greece that stars a fighter who had been contentedly relaxing in the afterlife until he was dug out and dispatched to rescue a lady. To fight skeletons, winged beasts, and wolves, he just has his hands and legs. A glowing wolf will occasionally appear and release a spirit ball, which are like gloating steroids that force your muscles to grow till they burst through your clothing. When they are collected, the warrior will change into one of 4 distinct forms, including a werewolf. You don't have to endure alone, thankfully. You can enjoy co-op with a pal both locally and online. You can now save your game at any point in time and come back to it later. Trophy hunters should be aware that this game, like the rest of Sega's vintage collection, contains a number of extremely simple achievements. Your hero is a zombie, one with significant identity issues to boot. Aside from the beautiful graveyard location, the main character's shape-shifting is another unique feature of this game. Essentially, you begin as a Tarzan-like character. You'll come across 3-headed wolves, while bashing the crap out of zombies, boars, leeches, and insane goats. When you kill one, you'll receive a spirit ball, which will instantly transform your condition to one of the 3 states. You begin by transforming into a Speedo-clad Hulk with greatly increased reach, speed, and power. But it's the second ball, which transforms you into a level-specific beast that gives the game its name. So, once you've transformed into the beast, you essentially just wipe the floor with the enemies for a brief period of time before the boss is summoned, and then you rinse and repeat. If you repeat this 4 times, you'll have rescued yourself a Greek goddess. Altered Beast is one of Sega's most recognizable games. While some may criticize the game for its simple controls, clear level design, and recurrent adversaries, I believe it is excellent for all of these reasons. You have to keep in mind that Altered Beast was originally an arcade game, so it was that before it was a console game, and it still plays like one. It helped establish the piece for Sega's control game development for years to come, not just for the Sega Genesis. Plus, as a revived Centurion, you get to shift into a werewolf, dragon, and bear. What other games allow you to do something like that? All in all, this is an iconic game in the werewolf aspect of things without a shadow of a doubt. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthbound 2021. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthbound isn't the first video game based on the popular World of Darkness tabletop role-playing system, but that isn't immediately apparent. With a rich background, pre-existing narrative, and one of history's most legendary creatures, it's not difficult to turn this into a fantastic game, and that is exactly what we ordered. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthbound has a lot of potential, and it lives up to the hype in a lot of ways. It's one of the only games today that allows players to control a werewolf, and it's a lot of fun. Players are likely to enjoy the fantastic tale experiences. Things should make sense for the most part, and let players immerse themselves in the world provided by the game, especially to someone who enjoys the deep backstory contained inside its werewolf-themed additional material. Newcomers to this genre will be introduced to an intriguing plotline that will leave them wanting more. Players control Cahal, a werewolf from the Irish tribe Fianna, in this game set in the World of Darkness realm. The game is beautifully situated in the American Northwest, giving it a dirty, rainy, and magical feel. Cahal can be controlled by a human, a real wolf, or a full-fledged werewolf, depending on the situation. Cahal can inflict the most havoc in full werewolf state, which makes the game much more interesting. In Earthbound, werewolves are simply one of many magical species fighting for supremacy. We won't be revealing much of the story since this is a relatively recent game, so the journey is for you to find out how things play out in this terrific game. The excellent images and acting add to the enjoyment of the game. Characters appear to be capable of displaying a wide range of emotions and frequently act authentically. One of the minor faults is choosing what Cahal says in reaction to other NPCs, as it is a little odd because the dialogue options are provided in a peculiar third-person perspective. After a while, this problem fades away and doesn't affect you as much. During cut scenes, the character models move smoothly and have decent facial expressions. It's incredible how smoothly you can switch between human, wolf, and werewolf forms, and there's nothing like sneaking around as a sneaky wolf. It may be claimed that the stealth part of the game is its strongest feature, and it certainly feels solid throughout the game. However, this surprise factor catches the players off guard, and they end up liking this element. Overall, Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthbound is a game with a fantastic promise that hits the target each time. Players will be pulled between the more pleasurable stealth gameplay and the more efficient open combat method, as both are fantastic ways to approach this game, all while the scenes and exchanges with other characters are enhanced by engaging language and great animations. You can snag this on PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and Series S, Xbox One, Microsoft Windows, and PlayStation 5. The Wolf Among Us, 2013. The concept is that the place where all the characters from fairy tales and folklore resides has been overtaken by a mysterious creature known as the Adversary, who is mysteriously absent from the game, forcing a mass evacuation into the mundane, that is, human, world. The great majority of them settle in Fabletown, which is conveniently located in Manhattan, and you follow Fabletown's elite and its sheriff, Bigby Wolf, as they try to keep their new home from falling apart. The game's tale begins in 1986, with the first true murder in Fabletown in quite some time. Fabletown's jittery deputy mayor, Ichabod Crane, orders Bigby to investigate promptly and quietly. Of course, what follows is like nothing you could have imagined. Telltale's well-established template hasn't been changed up much, and it doesn't need to be. Each scenario transports you to a new location where you can acquire stuff, converse with others, decide how Bigby will react, and encounter the rare quick-time sequence for some truly spectacular, hard-hitting fights and chases. The plot progresses once all of the options have been exhausted. The tempo is practical, straightforward, and enjoyable. There are a few instances when you get to play good cop, bad cop, which forces you to find the appropriate amount of coercion, whether verbal or disturbingly physical, without entirely breaking or calming down a suspect. Many of these choices do not result in purposeful, or at the very least wholly undesirable state, but it shows the same improvement on that score as Season 2 of The Walking Dead, where Bigby can end up making a poor decision in the heat of the moment, or leave it too late to act, resulting in unpleasant consequences down the road, or the loss of already shaky trust of some other individual. However, because we spend so much time with Fabletown's lower class, the people barely scraping by, the game is able to portray it well. On the surface, this is a story about the big bad wolf trying to make amends for devouring people's grandmothers, blowing up houses, and all of his other infamous mischief. But it is ultimately a story about displaced people, second-class citizens. Big Wolf is a terrific example of a superb werewolf game, since players get to see both faces of Big during the journey. To fight crime in Fabletown, Big must collaborate with the crooked temporary mayor. As is the case with all Telltale games, this one is another that should absolutely be played and lived through, as each player makes choices that are unique to them, and ends up being a great time of gameplay. This game is available on PlayStation 4, Android, Xbox One, iOS, Mac OS, Microsoft Windows, and PlayStation Vita. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim 2011. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is a fantasy fan's dream come true, which is why it's still selling fast across numerous platforms. Aside from the tense and thrilling moments spent fighting dragons across Skyrim, becoming a formidable werewolf may take the cake. Yes, your character can develop lycanthropy and undergo werewolf shifts. You can take up arms against dragons in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and your clashes with them are always thrilling. But depending on where your quest takes you, such battles may not even be the apex of your experience. You follow the story, which builds a captivating tale in which you are cast as a dragonborn, with the soul of a dragon emanating from within you. As a result, you have the key to figuring out why dragons have returned to the Earth, terrifying cities and threatening to kill the world as we know it. You'll face dragons, of course, but you'll also be crashing costume parties and scouring sewers for a pivotal figure long thought to be dead. It's a well-crafted story that makes effective use of those terrifying winged creatures who terrorize the population. The player can acquire the werewolf form on obtaining or meeting certain in-game requirements, which make it all the more worthwhile. It's impressive enough that there's so much to do. It's even more so because the majority of it is fantastic. Not every dungeon is enjoyable to visit. Stone-turning problems can bring the enjoyment to a halt, and a few cave designs repeated too many times will dampen your mood. However, every activity has a strong feeling of context, and there are surprises around every corner. The search for a lost dog evolves into a much bigger journey than you might expect, and the hilarious script and voice acting help to bring some light into this dark world of Tamriel. Being a werewolf in the game presents you with a plethora of abilities which enhance the in-game experience and take it to another level. The lore involved in this is too deep to be touched on at the moment, but playing it will set the tone for you, giving you all the more reason to get your hands on this well-crafted, beautifully narrated video game. In terms of gameplay, much of Skyrim's thrills are found outside of the action. Citizens go about their regular routines, selling their items in stores during the day and closing up shop at night to go to the pub or relax. They may make a remark about your bad breath or how unwell you appear in specific conditions. Children run up and down the streets, and one may even beg you to intervene in a bullying situation. Certain talks in Skyrim can strain the camera and temporarily immobilize you in place, but overall, conversations feel more organic than before, which is a positive move that adds to your indulgence. Glitches and abnormalities aren't surprising if you've played previous Elder Scrolls games. Nonetheless, Skyrim arrives in a year that has seen an onslaught of excellent RPGs, with tighter combat, fewer bugs, improved animations, and so on. In the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, it's not simply that there's a lot to do, it's also that the majority of it is delightful. Skyrim performs the most stunning of enhancements, the one that allows vast chunks of time to fly before your eyes, whether you're slashing a dragon's wings, reviving the dead, or playing as a werewolf. Bloodborne 2015. Bloodborne, like its predecessors, throws players into a harsh world and expects them to solve the puzzles on their own. To succeed, you must unlearn a lot of what you've learnt from previous games. The game's story is primarily told through discussions with other characters and the occasional cutscene or voiceover. It is set in the Gothic Victorian city of Yarnham, which is ravaged by a plague. However, players who wish to learn more about the beast hunts and Yharnam's past will look through the game's item descriptions. It features gothic aesthetics and colossal monsters. There are a variety of ghoulies lurking about Yharnam, ready to kill players if they venture too far off the beaten route. While players will encounter anxious and enraged werewolves along their journey of this terrible land, it is the first werewolf that will stick in the player's dreams. Players meet a terrifying werewolf in the beginning of the game. This werewolf isn't supposed to be defeated, but you wouldn't know that if you hadn't played the game or watched a video about it. It's a terrifying start to a grueling game, and some tenacious players have even managed to defeat the game's supposedly unbeatable initial werewolf. With regards to gameplay, Bloodborne's offensive technique is solely two-handed when it comes to murdering those things that shouldn't be. You'll usually have a firearm in your character's left hand, such as pistols, shotguns, or a flamethrower. You'll frequently carry a trick weapon in your character's right hand. You'll come across brilliantly and horribly constructed monsters born of imagination as you go through the cobblestone streets of Yharnam and its fringes, dark forests, graveyards, castles, and colleges. Several boss encounters feel like twists on the same theme. Holy males and females turned into monstrous werewolf-like wretches. But the common disease that affects all of these religious leaders helps explain at least some of their similarity. While the fighting is simple and obvious, other aspects of Bloodborne are less clear. There are new and instantly perplexing gaming features to figure out, such as a character disease known as frenzy, a mostly unexplained ailment that drives players insane enough to cause them great physical harm. There's also beast, a metamorphosis condition that hasn't proven to be a threat thus so far. Bloodborne's design is often confusing, but it's intriguing for a reason. It's the polar opposite of the overly detailed tutorials and rigid restrictions that are so popular in other games. When you succeed in deciphering its legend and enigmatic laws, or in overcoming a difficult challenge, you gain the extra satisfaction of knowing you've earned it. Longtime Souls fans may be put off by the game's limited customization options and narrow scope. Its difficulty will most likely surprise newcomers. Bloodborne is one of the software's best works, a tremendous achievement, and a wise departure from its Souls legacy. Make sure to get it on your PlayStation 4 to play it. Blood of the Werewolf, 2013. Selena, a werewolf, has been on her quest for quite some time. Hers was a furious voyage, as she sought revenge for the murder of her husband and the kidnapping of her son by Dr. Frankenstein and his movie monster allies. Blood of the Werewolf was a fantastic 2D action platform that was both gorgeous and cruel. Selena must pass through 10 phases before confronting Dr. Frankenstein. Jagged spikes, whirling saw razors, fireballs spewing lava, and paranormal monsters like vampires, ghouls, werewolves, and skeleton archers are all contained within. The game keeps you on your toes by crumbling platforms beneath your feet and threatening to knock you out of the air and into the abyss below. Countless times I've seen my life taken from me as I approached the exit of a room, and I had to take a break from playing several times to gather myself by yelling profanities at the ceiling. Selena is a legendary lycanthrope who, when blessed by the moon's power, may transform into a gigantic werewolf. She keeps her human shape as long as there is a roof over her head, battling mythical monsters with a crossbow and activating various switches and levers. Selena utilizes her teeth to tear adversaries like harpies to shreds in her more powerful werewolf form, while also taking use of her heightened agility to double jump across vast chasms. Special power-ups you earn along the way strengthen the abilities of each of her two personas. While the game is challenging, it isn't entirely harsh. There is no set number of lives, and checkpoints can be found throughout each level, with many of them just beyond a lethal trap. Respawning at checkpoints restores your health and abilities, easing the pain of death. There are also sigils scattered around the stages that, once collected, increase your life, providing you a better chance of surviving long enough to reach the next checkpoint. The gameplay mechanics are amazing, and the game now feels much better than before. You fight boss monsters straight out of classic Hollywood horror flicks throughout the game. You fight the likes of Mr. Hyde and subsequently trade blows with Dracula while avoiding snaking surges of purple energy. You must transition between Selina's two different forms in most bouts, challenging you to change up your playstyle. The boss fights are difficult, and the key to victory is your ability to observe and memorize each enemy's distinct habits, then strike when they are vulnerable. It may take several tries and a lot of patience, but it only adds to the sweetness of the eventual win. The finale of Blood of the Werewolf has been enhanced, providing a fuller summary while hinting at unexpected developments in Selina's future. With the repairs and gameplay mechanics in place, Blood of the Werewolf is back to its best. Fun, tough, and at long last, fulfilling. You're up against terrifying traps and some of Hollywood's most infamous creatures. How long will you be able to hold off the powers of evil? Up to you to find out for yourself. You can get it on Steam or Windows. The Order is thick with exquisitely detailed environments that showcase the grand opulence of London built atop poverty-stricken slums. It's populated by characters that are generally well-developed, motivated, and believable. And there's a concerted effort to extend that fantastic polish into a seamless experience, merging gameplay with its many lengthy cut scenes as it delivers a generally good historical fantasy story. Sir Galahad, the main character, is a knight of the Round Table who must employ contemporary technology to battle these half-beasts. The confrontations with the werewolves are the most intense parts of the game. The Order 1886's werewolves are savage, scary, and deadly. These are fleeting moments, yet they are powerful. You meet historical personalities, like famed scientist Nikola Tesla, who acts as the Order's armor guy and developer ready at Dawn's parallel version of London. His cooperation enables for the creation of incredible Victorian superweapons that never existed, such as the arc gun, thermite rifle, and shoulder cannon. You can look into the East India Company's transactions and learn about a new serial killer known as Jack the Ripper, and you do it all as Sir Galahad. The Order 1886 builds a fascinating and believable patchwork of historical fiction by plucking these strands from history and folklore. Fighting werewolves is one of the Order's better sections, largely because their hit-and-run attacks are faster and less predictable than exchanging rounds with a cookie-cutter soldier, shotgunner, or sharpshooter. Regrettably, the Order's knights are just part-time monster fighters. Meanwhile, the visuals are nothing short of jaw-dropping. The Order 1886 looks like a live-action cutscene with layers upon layers of texturing, surface effects, volumetric mists, theatrical lighting, and nearly infinite detail. The artists of Ready at Dawn have done an amazing job fusing steampunk with high Victorian art and design, resulting in a game full of sparkling locations, exquisite objects, and believable characters. Half-breeds are human-like creatures that share genes with both men and animals. Half-breeds have evolved animistic features such as fur, claws, and extended snouts and fangs as a result of these mutations, distinguishing them from normal humans. Despite the fact that their origins are unclear, these monsters have been fighting humanity for generations. Most half-breeds are referred to as well-known legendary monsters, such as werewolves, because their physical appearance is reminiscent of creatures from mythology and lore. They form a major part of this game, and it is genuinely a blast of a time to encounter these beings. The game's strongest features are its amazing visuals, one-of-a-kind plot, mood, and style, all of which are genuinely fantastic, as well as its fascinating fiction. There's no excuse to skip out on this lore-filled adventure. You can find this on the PlayStation Store for the PS4. Wolf Team 2007. Aria Games' Wolf Team is a free online first-person shooter. It can accommodate up to 16 players in a single game, has a large number of weaponry, and the maps are generally good. Wolf Team's basic gameplay is straightforward. You shoot and kill other players that are opposing you. The players are divided into two teams, red and blue. with no major differences between them except that Blue's armor appears to be slightly more advanced. The ability to morph into a wolfman is what sets Wolf Team apart from games like Call of Duty and Combat Arms. Wolves are significantly stronger than humans, but they can only attack from a short distance. A good wolf player, on the other hand, can easily close the gap and kill a human. Humans, on the other hand, can kill a wolf player before they even get close. Wolf Team offers a variety of engrossing game types, including the standard deathmatch, conquest mode, which lets players work together to conquer as many bases as possible, and destruction mode, in which one team attempts to blow up the other's base. Players can also obtain a wide variety of weaponry as they go through the game. The base story revolves around the fact that numerous genetic mutations were discovered a few years ago, in which several humans looked to have a base layout comparable to wolves. While the exact number of persons who had these mutations is unknown, official and newspaper reports describing giant hairy monsters have led experts to conclude that the original number of people who developed the mutation was in the hundreds. However, it's unclear how many were caused by natural conditions or even underground experimentation on human subjects. The game carries forward by dealing with its consequences by playing it out as an FPS. You will have to be strategic in your use of the different forms you are provided so as to come out triumphant always. It has satisfactory graphics that makes the entire game all the more enjoyable as well. Nightmare Creatures, 1997. Nightmare Creatures is disturbing on its own merits. Yes, this action-adventure horror game for the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 may appear old and banal by today's standards, but it was terrifying back in the day. The savage werewolves are one of the game's major antagonists. They were no slouches, and only planning and expertise could overcome them. Nightmare Creatures feeds on the spooky atmosphere it creates. Players couldn't see much ahead of them due to technical restrictions at the time, as much of the upcoming level would be dark. It's a unique experience when a bloodthirsty werewolf finally lunges out to attack. It's a visually stunning, behind-the-back 3D action game packed with brutal, button-pounding mayhem, in which you must defeat an evil scientist bent on turning the entire globe into a fiend-infested death trap. Deranged demons are attacking London in response to the demonic Adam Crowley's attempt to take over the metropolis before moving on to the rest of the planet. However, the brotherhood he belongs to has been wrecked by infighting, and there are clues to his whereabouts strewn over the city. Ignatius Blackword and Nadia Franciscus must battle with 21 distinct sorts of animals, while seeking for clues to locate and destroy Crowley. The antagonist's origins and goals are complicated. He works for a devil-worshipping sect known as the Brotherhood of Hecate. The cult produced a potion in 1666 that was supposed to grant them superhuman abilities, but instead turned them into nightmare creatures. Now it's 1834, and reports of monsters and dead people are circulating around the city, which has developed into a frightening state with no hope in sight. The massive monsters you'll be fighting around every corner, from zombies to werewolves to giant insects, are incredibly realistic, swift, and fierce. And any of your two formidable characters appears to be an equal match for them. The scenery, though, is what really brings 19th century London to life. A strong fog hangs just above the stone streets. Street lamps flicker, giving a tranquil light on their surrounds. Rivers and waterways appear calm, and the dwellings lining their banks seem almost inviting. Even though each of the game's dozen or so stages looks and feels distinct, the washed-out color palette utilized throughout the game provides everything a sense of realism. Nightmare Creatures features a terrifying soundtrack from a horror film, as well as disturbing ambient sound effects that will make you nervous as you round each corner. Each thing you come across sounds as vicious as it appears, snarling, barking, moaning, growling, and roaring at you as it attempts desperately to put an end to your torment. Evidently, it is a visually appealing product, but you shouldn't spend too much time admiring your surroundings. In terms of gameplay, this implies you must keep looking for things to kill, otherwise your adrenaline gauge will run out and you will perish. When you rid a room of demonic presence, only to be welcomed by a leaping challenge where one wrong step equals certain death, the time constraint becomes challenging. It's worth playing in any mode if you like hack-and-slash games, terror, or just want to escape to another world. There are also cheat codes for the game that can enhance the experience and provide a dose of nostalgia in an instant. It's no doubt we sometimes miss the days when cheat codes came included with every game. As the game's horrors crawl out of the darkness and work their way to you, you'll likely need them as well.